Welcome to Who Killed Haing Ngor? We're about 3/4 of the way through Season 3 of the podcast, and I realized this investigation is getting pretty complicated. So this episode is our 3/4 review. I'll take you along the path I've been following and share with you some of my thinking about what we've turned up so far. I'm also open to answering questions. I recently launched a Substack page at MP Nunan. There, my Haing Ngor investigation shares the space with another project. Please feel free to reach out to me there or by email at whokilledhaingnor@gmail.com. Also, I'm still writing the last 3 or 4 episodes of the season, so after this, I'm taking a 1-week break. That will allow me to catch up and hopefully score a few more interviews. I'll be back on July 17th, 2026. My name is Patricia Nunan, and this is Who Killed Haing Ngor? There are some key differences between my podcast and most true crime podcasts. A lot of podcasts feature a couple of hosts. They discuss and dissect murder convictions, serial killers, or cold cases. They're working off other people's journalism. Those podcasts are essentially conversations recorded live. Others, like mine, are documentary investigations, where journalism happens. There are differences within that category as well. Some podcasts have the budget and the organizational support to finish an entire investigation first. Then they publish 8 to 12 well-polished episodes. Often, those fit that classic Hollywood hero's journey narrative structure. My podcast is different. I'm a one-woman band engaged in a passion project, and this investigation is happening in as close as I can make it to real time. That's why I put out appeals in every episode for anyone with information to chime in. I'm doing my best to involve listeners in the investigation without giving everything away. There's a downside to this approach. The investigation feels inconclusive. We've all gotten so used to Hollywood's tidy narratives, you may feel a little lost. And organized crime networks are complicated by nature. That's why I'm doing this recap. A quick reminder, the Who Killed Haing Ngor podcast is entirely my own. On the investigation, I'm collaborating with Frank, the researcher for the Innocence Center.
But he said, I don't know how long I last here because there's so many threats against me. I said, why you are here if so many threats? He said, I don't know, but I want to be here.
We think Ngor's murder was most likely a contract killing. And by we, I mean Frank, Michael Samanchik, the executive director of the Innocence Center, and me. Ngor had $93,000 of debt at the time of his death. That's $50,000 he borrowed in his girlfriend's name, the $10,000 he owed to Larry, and that's just in Cambodia. He owed another $33,000 in a loan he took out in the U.S., according to probate documents. That's $203,000 in today's money. And just a quick correction, I actually mixed that figure up in last week's episode. I forgot to include the money that Ngor owed to Larry, so the $203,000 in 2026 terms is accurate. Ngor did most of his business in Cambodia. I mean, in the 1990s, virtually everything he did outside of acting jobs and some activism took place there. He told his friend Cece, whom we just heard, that it's where he wanted to be. And that's despite the never-ending stream of death threats he received in the last year of his life. One of those threats was from a Singaporean business partner whom we're calling Larry. This information comes from Ngor's secretary and girlfriend, who told police that Larry represented a group of Singaporean investors, a Singapore group. Larry threatened Ngor's life when the bank license he paid $20,000 for became worthless. Ngor had missed a deadline to change the name on that license. Here's Semanchik.
Larry became, quote, it says, Larry became angry and told Ngor he knew professional killers who would find Ngor.
At the time, Cambodia was a money laundering free-for-all. Between 1994 and 1995, nearly 30 new banks opened up. Few had any actual assets to their name. Larry's threat sent Ngor into hiding for a few weeks until he was able to pay back half of that. To Frank and me, it does not make sense that Ngor was killed over that remaining $10,000. There were banks across Southeast Asia that cooperated with criminal syndicates. If Larry was with an organized crime group, then perhaps what he was really angry about was lost revenue from not having their very own bank with which to launder money. That could run into the millions of dollars.
It didn't take us very long to figure out that Cambodia in the fall of 1995 was kind of going through a banking overhaul where they were attempting to root out a lot of the corruption that was going on and the ability for anybody to own a banking license.
If the LAPD handed the Ngor case over to the FBI in 1996, most likely that's something they would have figured out. As listeners know, Ngor was killed in Los Angeles in the carport of his Chinatown apartment. So my investigatory premise that defines Season 3? Anyone who could orchestrate a murder in LA because of deals gone sour in Cambodia is likely affiliated with an organized criminal group, or a triad. In other words, an Asian mafia group. That's what took me to Taiwan. The Bamboo Union is a Taiwanese triad that moved into Cambodia in that 1990s Wild West period. Among other things, they were loan sharks and money launderers. By 1994, Ngor told a journalist he was short on cash. The Bamboo Union caught my eye because I was looking for a triad or an Asian criminal syndicate with a track record of killing people in the U.S. They assassinated Henry Liu, a Taiwanese dissident living outside San Francisco in 1984. They aborted a second plan to kill another opposition figure, also in the 1980s. That plot was most likely in LA. To me, the modus operandi of the Liu murder shared some strong similarities to Ngor's killing. I learned a lot in Taiwan about how the Bamboo Union and other organized crime groups have metastasized in Cambodia. These days, so many are from mainland China that Cambodia is a virtual satellite state to Beijing. They're running cyber scam centers, manned by modern-day slaves, in cooperation with corrupt elements of the government. That is Cambodia today, a mafia state and an ongoing human rights crisis. But I wasn't finding any links between the Bamboo Union and Larry, or Ngor. That is, until I looked at Ngor through the lens of the film industry.
And if they wanted a particular movie star to appear in an action movie, then if he wouldn't sign the contract, then muscle was required. And it got very violent.
Through the film industry lens, I can now place Ngor 1 to 2 degrees of separation away from the Bamboo Union assassins who killed Henry Liu. One of those assassins moved to Cambodia in 1996, the year Ngor was killed. Plus, Ngor had debt, and the Bamboo Union were loan sharks. As weird as that is, this is one of those inconclusive moments. It's possible that Ngor could have gotten some cash with just a phone call if he reached out to film industry friends. But that's just speculation. I didn't prove anything. Those connections are circumstantial. And while I'm not really pursuing the Taiwan angle anymore, I'm keeping that door open. I mean, who knows? The Bamboo Union may pop up in this investigation again. I also want to illuminate everything going on in Ngor's life that the LAPD overlooked or ignored. We have pages and pages of LAPD notes and clues about Ngor's murder. They were legally required to share them with Samanchik, since the Innocence Center represents Jason Chan. Chan, along with Indra Lim and Taksun Tan, we believe were all wrongfully convicted of Ngor's killing. A reminder, LA Deputy District Attorney Craig Hum declined my interview request. So too did now former Detective Ed Yee, who investigated the case. One thing the LAPD knew and blew off: Ngor had been planning to run for office in Cambodia, perhaps even prime minister.
The whole entire atmosphere was extremely tense, with lots and lots of violence.
That's what I went into in the Wrong Bedfellows episode with Brad Adams. Just how dangerous Cambodia's political climate was in the weeks surrounding Ngor's death. After all, he told an LA friend that he was dropping out of politics because, quote, it would get him killed. Former Prime Minister Hun Sen is a murderous dictator, but I don't think he's personally connected to Ngor's death. They had partnered together on some humanitarian projects, and he appears to remember Ngor fondly. In 2020, Hun Sen even paid for a new building at the Haing Ngor Greengrass Primary School in Takeo Province. That was on the condition that the community there not change the school's name. Hun Sen is also wicked smart, far too smart to carry out a transnational assassination when his country was still dependent on foreign aid. Plus, he hated the Khmer Rouge. You got to remember the impact the killing fields had on Cambodia. It probably helped prevent the Khmer Rouge from returning to power, and that's not something Hun Sen would forget. But you said he made enemies. Did he have enemies in the expatriate Cambodian community in Los Angeles?
I believe he did. I think he was very controversial.
But Hun Sen is not the only Cambodian capable of murder. There's an active Cambodian community in Long Beach, California, also involved in politics. It's something Ngor's friend Roger Warner was aware of. Frank and I reached out to former Prime Minister Hun Sen for an interview, but unfortunately, we never heard back. So I'm afraid that's another inconclusive moment, Ngor's political ambitions. But it's also indicative of how much the LAPD just blew off. Now, imagine if you're me. I spend a lot of time thinking about this case, even when I don't want to. So does Frank. I still think Ngor's murder was about money. That's the sense that his Cambodia-based friends and acquaintances all shared. So that's why Frank and I have carried on with our efforts to build a case against Larry as the representative of a Singapore group that Ngor's secretary told police about. Larry is a Chinese-born, naturalized Singaporean, and apparently he wanted a bank. Using Singaporean business records, Frank and I did a deep dive into who Larry is connected to and whether we could find any money laundering links. Our instincts were right. More often than you may guess, Singaporean authorities look the other way when their financial system is being used for criminal purposes.
I mean, that's interesting, but again, it's not criminal until you see that they're using that to move money illicitly.
But our efforts to find any dirt on Larry's associate, Harry, came up short. Harry's just a corporate services provider. The 1,300 companies with which he's associated raise scores of red flags for possible money laundering. but we don't have the paperwork required to prove it. Despite all the inconclusive moments, I'm actually really pleased with what Frank and I have discovered so far. We've been building a body of understanding about the lawlessness and the climate of criminality in which Ngor was operating. It's this understanding that's lacking from so many other attempts to tell Ngor's story and to investigate his death. I can't say for certain that we'll successfully solve his murder, but we're doing our best to leave no stone unturned. And not to belabor the metaphor, but turning over a new stone may be meaningless if you don't understand the mud in which you found it. That brings me to last week's episode, The Narcissism of Small Differences. I took advantage of my time in Phnom Penh last year to do the legwork and the kind of investigation that you just can't do from behind a computer screen in the States. My Cambodian colleague and I found one person who actually knew Haing Ngor. That was Yuk Chang. He used to see Ngor going into the Naga World Casino, and that's significant. We also found a pattern. The so-called Chinese organized crime groups in Cambodia in the 1990s were ethnic Chinese from across Southeast Asia, but not from mainland China. There was some historic enmity there, or at least perceived enmity. So broadly speaking, when Cambodia first opened up, mainland Chinese stayed away. When you look at Ngor in Cambodia through the lens of money, the pattern to emerge is that he often associated with ethnic Chinese from Malaysia. I can't say for certain if this is why, but Ngor spoke the Chinese dialect Teochew, and so do many from that ethnic Chinese community in Malaysia. There's also some overlap with Singapore. Examining that pattern led me to a criminal syndicate that we haven't gotten into yet in the podcast. That's what I'm going to get into in the remainder of Season 3. And oh yeah, one more thing. I found Larry. My name is Patricia Nunan, and this is Who Killed Haing Ngor? A reminder, I'm taking next week off so I can catch up on writing. See you back here on July 17th. The other clips in this episode were Bob Ewell, the executive director of Key Risk Consulting Asia about the film industry, and retired FBI agent Deborah LaPrevotte. If you knew Haing Ngor personally and would like to contribute, or if you have information or ideas that may be helpful to the investigation, please reach out. I can be found at whokilledhaingnor@gmail.com. I'm on both Telegram and Substack as MP Nunan. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. If you'd like to support the investigation, there's a donation button on the webpage, whokilledhaingnor.com. Thank you for listening.